Ranger James Hawthorne knew something was wrong the moment his sensors picked up the anomaly. In 15 years of patrolling Earth's most remote wilderness preserve, he'd never seen readings like these. The energy signature pulsed weakly from somewhere in the northern quadrant, where the ancient redwoods grew so dense they blocked out the sun. He guided his hoverbike through the canopy, careful to avoid the massive trunks that had stood sentinel here for centuries. The preserve existed as humanity's statement to the stars, proof that despite reaching for the cosmos, they still protected their world's natural wonders. As Earth's guardian, James took that responsibility seriously. The signature grew stronger as he approached a small clearing. His breath caught at the sight before him, a deep gouge in the earth, steam still rising from scorched soil. The object responsible lay half buried in the loamy ground, its silvery surface unmarred despite the impact. It wasn't large, barely the size of a personal transport pod, but James knew instantly it wasn't of Earth origin. Movement caught his eye. A figure stumbled from behind the wreckage, humanoid but definitely alien. Her skin held an opalescent quality that shifted colors like the northern lights, and her hair seemed to float as if suspended in water despite the still air. She wore some kind of ceremonial armor, now damaged and sparking. Their eyes met across the clearing, hers a swirling galaxy of purple and gold, impossibly deep. She spoke, her voice like wind chimes in a storm, in a language his universal translator couldn't decipher. Then her legs gave out, and James found himself moving before conscious thought, catching her before she hit the ground. Up close, he could see the injuries, burns along her left side, a deep gash across her shoulder that leaked silvery blood. "Easy," he said softly, lowering her gently to the ground. "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached for his medkit, but she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, her skin cool against his. Her next words came through the translator in broken phrases. "Hide, must hide, they follow." James looked up at the sky, but saw only Earth's familiar blue. Yet something in her voice, the raw fear there, made him trust her warning. His outpost wasn't far, a reinforced cabin designed to withstand anything Earth's wilderness could throw at it. It would have to do. "Can you walk?" he asked, already shifting to support her weight. She nodded, though her face tightened with pain. Together they made slow progress through the forest, James hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. His training screamed at him, this violated dozens of first contact protocols. But leaving an injured sentient to die violated everything he believed in. The cabin security system recognized him, doors sliding open silently. Inside, he helped her to the medical bay, a small room equipped to handle everything from bare attacks to severe burns. She collapsed onto the examination bed, her armor making odd clicking sounds as it powered down. "I need to treat your wounds," he said, holding up the medical scanner. "Will you let me help?" She studied him for a long moment, those impossible eyes seeming to peer into his soul. Finally, she nodded, reaching up to release catches on her armor that his human eyes had missed. The protective shell fell away, revealing more serious injuries than he'd first thought. As he worked to stabilize her, using a combination of earth medicine and the universal healing compounds developed for xenobiological life forms, she drifted in and out of consciousness. In her lucid moments, she watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read, part wonder, part fear, part something else entirely. "My name is James," he said during one such moment, applying regenerative gel to the worst of her burns. "James Hawthorne." She hesitated, then spoke a word that sounded like singing crystals. His translator approximated it as Zena. She touched her chest, then winced at the movement. Thank you, James Hawthorne. Many would not help, one like me." "I'm not many," he replied, finishing with the burns. "Rest now. You're safe here." As she finally fell into true sleep, James secured the cabin and erased all records of the energy signature from the preserve's monitoring systems. His superiors would want to know about this, about her. Protocol demanded he report any extraterrestrial contact immediately. But something held him back. Her warning echoed in his mind, they follow. Whoever they were, they'd meant to kill her. And James had a feeling that calling in this incident would bring far more trouble than just violation of protocol citations. He settled into the monitoring chair, checking the cabin's defensive systems and scanning the skies. Outside, Earth's night fell over the ancient forest, stars appearing one by one. Somewhere up there, someone was looking for Xena. James intended to make sure they didn't find her, at least not until he understood what he'd gotten himself into. Looking at her sleeping form, her skin now glowing softly in the dim light, he wondered if he'd made the right choice. But then he remembered the fear in her voice, the trust in her eyes when she let him treat her wounds. No, whatever was hunting her, whatever she was running from, he'd made the only choice he could live with. Now he just had to figure out how to keep them both alive long enough to deal with the consequences. Dawn broke over the preserve, casting dappled light through the ancient redwoods. James watched as Xena stood at the cabin's reinforced window, her opalescent skin reflecting the morning light in mesmerizing patterns. 3 days had passed since he'd found her, and her wounds were healing with remarkable speed. "Your world is so alive," she said, pressing a hand against the transparent barrier. "We have nothing like these on Luminara." Her translator was working better now, though her voice still carried that ethereal musical quality that made his spine tingle. "Luminara?" James asked, trying to recall if he'd heard of it in any of the official first contact databases. "That's your home world?" Xena's expression darkened, the colors beneath her skin shifting to deeper, stormier hues. It was. Before the Ascendancy decided that progress meant destroying everything that made us who we are. She turned to face him, and James found himself caught in those galaxy-deep eyes again. "I should tell you why they hunt me. You've risked much by sheltering me, James Hawthorne. You deserve to know the truth." James gestured to the living area, where they'd spent the past evenings talking. He'd learned to read her moods through the subtle shifts in her skin's luminescence. This particular pattern meant something serious was coming. "My people, the Luminarians, have always been guided by the Council of Light, our wisest scholars and artists," she began, settling onto the couch with an innate grace that made even simple movements look like dance. "We believed in preserving knowledge, in learning from the past while looking to the future. But the Ascendancy..." Her hands clenched. "They gained power promising technological advancement at any cost. They wanted to change your entire civilization," James guessed, remembering similar conflicts from Earth's history. "They wanted to erase it," Xena corrected, her voice sharp with pain. "To replace our organic technology with cold machines, to upgrade our people with cybernetic implants that would strip away our natural abilities. When the Council refused, the Ascendancy staged a coup." She held out her hand, and James watched in amazement as light seemed to flow between her fingers, forming complex patterns in the air. "This is what they want to destroy, our connection to the quantum field itself. They call it primitive, unreliable. They cannot understand that technology without soul is just another form of chains." James found himself reaching out, fascinated by the dance of light. When his fingers met hers, a spark of energy jumped between them, and for a moment he felt what she felt, the endless web of possibility that connected all things, the pure joy of existing within that web. "That's incredible," he breathed as the sensation faded. "Why would anyone want to give that up?" "Fear," Xena said simply. "Fear of what we might become if we embrace our full potential. The Ascendancy believes control is more important than growth." Her expression hardened. "I escaped with the last uncorrupted copy of our ancestral knowledge, everything that makes us who we are. They will burn worlds to get it back." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. James thought of the preserve he'd sworn to protect, of Earth's own struggling balance between progress and preservation. "What will happen if they find you?" "Best case?" They take the knowledge and kill me quickly. Worst case. She shuddered, her skin rippling with dark colors. They use me to find others who resist them, then upgrade me into one of their drones. James felt something fierce and protective stir in his chest. The thought of her vibrant spirit being crushed into conformity was unbearable. That's not going to happen, he said firmly. But we need a better plan than just hiding in my cabin. Earth has protocols for political asylum seekers, even interstellar ones. No. Xena stood abruptly, panic flaring across her skin. Official channels will only alert them. The Ascendancy has infiltrators everywhere. That's how they took control so quickly on Luminera. James rose too, catching her trembling hands in his. Hey, look at me. We'll figure this out. I have contacts who operate outside official channels, people who help protect Earth's wilderness from those who'd exploit it. They might be able to help protect you too. Xena searched his face, and he tried to project all the certainty he could muster. Finally, she squeezed his hands. Why do you risk so much for me? Your career, your life, you barely know me. Because it's right, James said simply. Because you trusted me when you had every reason not to. And because. He hesitated, then pushed on. Because in just 3 days, you've shown me wonders I never imagined possible. Sometimes the most important things in life are the ones we can't explain. A soft glow began to emanate from where their hands joined, spreading up their arms in spiraling patterns. Xena's eyes widened. The resonance. I didn't think it was possible with a non-luminarian. Before James could ask what she meant, the cabin's proximity alerts blared to life. On the security screens, multiple craft were descending through the upper atmosphere, their energy signatures matching the remnants he'd found on Xena's escape pod. They found me, Xena whispered, the light dying from her skin. James, I'm so sorry. I never meant to bring this to your world. James was already moving, grabbing the emergency packs he kept ready. This isn't your fault. But we need to move. Now. He hit a series of commands on the cabin's control panel, initiating protocols he'd hoped never to use. I know places in these woods even Earth's best scanners can't penetrate. If we can reach them. We won't make it on foot, Xena said, her tactical training evident in how quickly she assessed the situation. Their ships are too fast. James allowed himself a small smile as he led her to a concealed chamber beneath the cabin. Who said anything about on foot? The lights came up to reveal his prototype scout vehicle, a hybrid of standard Earth tech and some modifications that weren't exactly regulation. Sometimes breaking protocol has its advantages. As the first scanner sweeps from the Ascendancy ships reached the cabin, James and Xena were already deep in the ancient forest, racing against time and technology in a desperate bid for freedom. Above them, the morning sun continued to filter through the redwood canopy, nature's ancient guardians bearing silent witness to a chase that would determine not just their fate, but potentially that of 2 civilizations. James's scout vehicle hummed nearly silently through the redwood understory, its adaptive camouflage blending with the shifting patterns of shadow and light. In the passenger seat, Xena maintained a sphere of quantum interference around them, disrupting any attempts to track their energy signature. The effort left trails of luminescent sweat along her temples, but she didn't falter. There's a geothermal cave system ahead, James said, threading between massive tree trunks with practiced ease. The mineral deposits interfere with most scanning technology. We can regroup there, figure out our next move. A blast of energy seared through the canopy above them, turning ancient wood to ash. Xena's hands tightened on the console. They're using slash-and-burn tactics. They'll destroy your forest to find me. Not if I can help it. James activated the vehicle's emergency beacon, keyed to alert preserve rangers of a forest fire threat. It would bring help, but also questions they couldn't answer. Right now, he'd take that risk to protect his woods. They reached the cave entrance just as another energy blast carved a smoking path behind them. James guided the vehicle into the natural tunnel system, killing the engines once they were deep enough. In the darkness, Zena's bioluminescence cast ethereal patterns on the rock walls. "You should leave me," she said softly. "Get to safety. I can handle them alone." James turned to her, seeing the fear she tried to hide beneath her determined expression. "Not happening. We're in this together now." He reached for her hand, felt that familiar spark of connection. "Besides, you still haven't taught me how to do that light trick of yours." A small smile ghosted across her face, but her eyes remained troubled. "James, there's something I haven't told you. About the resonance between us." Before she could continue, a distant boom echoed through the caves. James checked his sensors. "They're systematic, setting up a search grid. We need to keep moving." He grabbed their emergency packs. "There's an underwater channel that leads to another cave system. Think you can handle a swim?" Zena's skin rippled with patterns he'd never seen before. Anticipation, maybe? "My people evolved from aquatic ancestors. Water is where we're strongest." They made their way through the twisting passages, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. The underground pool gleamed in Zena's natural light, the water crystal clear and cold. As they prepared to dive, she caught James's arm. "The resonance, among my people, it's more than just energy manipulation. It's how we recognize our true partners, those whose quantum signatures harmonize perfectly with our own." Her eyes met his, swirling with emotion. "It's extremely rare, especially with other species. Almost impossible." James felt his heart skip. "Almost? I've been trying to deny it, to protect you. But every moment we're together, the resonance grows stronger." She stepped closer, and James felt that familiar energy building between them. "If we complete the bond, there's no going back. You'll be changed. The ascendancy will hunt you too." James cupped her face, watching the colors dance beneath her skin at his touch. "Zena, I was changed the moment I found you in that clearing. Whatever this is between us, I choose it. I choose you." She surged up, pressing her lips to his. The resonance exploded through them both, a symphony of light and sensation that made every other experience pale in comparison. James felt his consciousness expand, touching that quantum web Zena had shown him before, but deeper now, more intimate. He could sense her presence in his mind, a song of starlight and courage and fierce love. When they finally parted, James noticed his skin had taken on a faint luminescence of its own. Zena touched it wonderingly. "The bond is starting. Once complete, we'll be able to share energy, strengthen each other. But it will take time. Time we don't have right now," James said, hearing new explosions above. He grinned at her. "Race you to the other side?" They dove together into the frigid water. James had expected to struggle keeping up with Zena's natural advantages, but the partial bond between them seemed to lend him extra strength. They moved in perfect synchronization through the underwater tunnel, their combined bioluminescence lighting the way. Emerging in the second cave system, they found themselves in a vast underground chamber filled with crystal formations. Zena's light reflected off them, creating a dazzling display. For a moment, they simply stood in awe of the beauty. "Your world still has so much magic," Zena whispered. "The Ascendancy would call these crystals inefficient natural formations and harvest them for raw materials. They cannot see that some things are precious precisely because they formed on their own, finding their own perfect patterns." James watched the light play across her features. "Like us?" She smiled, touching his now glowing chest. "Like us." The moment was shattered by a focused scan beam cutting through the crystal chamber. They pressed against the wall as voices echoed from above, harsh, mechanical voices that made Zena shudder. "Life signs detected. Quantum resonance pattern identified." Target location confirmed. We need to move, James whispered, already plotting routes in his head. The old mining tunnels connect to this system. If we can reach them. Zena's expression hardened with determination. Then let's go. Together. As they raced through the crystal caves, James felt the bond between them pull stronger with each step. Whatever changes were happening to him, whatever dangers lay ahead, he knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The Ascendancy might be hunting them, but they had something the hunters could never understand, a connection that transcended the physical, a love that bridged the gap between stars. Now they just had to survive long enough to explore what that meant. The old mining tunnels echoed with the rhythmic sound of boots on metal grating. James and Zena moved swiftly through the abandoned complex, their shared bioluminescence dimmed to bare minimum. James could feel Zena's presence in his mind growing stronger, emotions, fragments of thoughts, and most crucially, warnings of danger flickering between them. 3 squads converging, she transmitted through their bond. They're hurting us. James nodded, feeling the tactical assessment resonate with his own experience. The main shaft ahead, it's a kill box. They'll expect us to take it. A ghost of a smile flickered across Zena's face. Then let's disappoint them. They reached a junction where the mining operation had broken through into a natural cave formation. Ancient mining equipment lay scattered about, half reclaimed by mineral deposits. Through their strengthening bond, James caught glimpses of Zena's plan forming. It's risky, he thought back at her. If the timing's off. Trust in the resonance, she replied, her skin shimming with determination. Your instincts are already adapting to the quantum field. As if to prove her point, James felt his awareness expand, sensing the complex web of energy flowing through the rocks themselves. The modifications happening to his body through their bond were accelerating, changing him in ways that should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like awakening to a world that had always been there, just beyond his perception. The first Ascendancy troops appeared at the far end of the junction, figures in sleek armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated. Through Zena's knowledge, James realized what he was seeing. They're drones, he thought. Former Luminarians. Yes, came Zena's reply, thick with grief and anger. This is what the Ascendancy does to those who resist progress, erases everything that makes them unique, turns them into networked weapons. The drones raised their weapons in perfect unison. A harsh, synthesized voice echoed through the cavern. Rogue element Zena, you have corrupted this human with prohibited quantum resonance. Surrender for purification. Resistance will result in termination. James felt Zena's fury surge through their bond. She stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. I am Zena, keeper of the old ways, and you dare speak to me of corruption? Look at what you've become, everything that made us beautiful, turned to cold efficiency. Energy began to gather around her hands, and James felt his own body responding, power flowing between them. The drones took aim, but Zena wasn't finished. You forgot the most important lesson of the quantum field, she continued, her voice building like a storm. Everything is connected. She thrust her hands toward the ancient mining equipment, and James instinctively added his power to hers. The quantum field rippled visibly, and suddenly every piece of metal in the cavern came alive with crystalline formations, growing at impossible speeds. The drones found themselves entangled in rapidly expanding mineral structures, their perfect coordination disrupted. Now! Zena's thought sparked through their bond. Together, they reached for the deeper energies flowing through the earth. The cave floor cracked, venting superheated steam from the geothermal systems below. In the chaos, they ran. But the Ascendancy forces were far from defeated. As James and Zena raced through maintenance tunnels, more drones converged on their position. A blast caught James in the shoulder, searing through his jacket. The pain echoed through their bond, making Zena stumble. I'm fine, he gritted out, though they both knew it was a lie. The wound wasn't serious, but it was slowing them down. They burst out of the tunnels into a massive natural cavern, bioluminescent fungi coating the walls in patches of ethereal light. An underground river churned far below, its roar echoing off the stone. And ahead, a bridge. Old, industrial, but still intact. James. Zena's thought carried layers of emotion. The resonance bond, I can complete it now. It would heal you, give you full access to the quantum field. But there's no going back. You'd never be fully human again. And she hesitated. It would link us permanently. If one dies. Another explosion rocked the tunnel behind them. James pulled her close, letting her feel his certainty through their partial bond. Zena, I made my choice. Whatever happens, we face it together. Her eyes swirled with starlight as she pressed her forehead to his. The resonance surged between them, and this time they didn't fight it. James felt the quantum field open fully to his awareness, felt his very DNA shifting as Zena's energy merged with his own. His wound healed in a flash of light, and suddenly he could sense everything, the living energy in the fungi, the powerful currents in the river below, the crystalline structures in the rock walls. Most of all, he felt Zena, her presence in his mind now a constant song of light and love and fierce joy. Through her eyes, he saw himself as she saw him, brave and beautiful and burning with newfound power. They turned to face the approaching drones together, their combined bioluminescence filling the cavern. Where their hands joined, pure quantum energy crackled like lightning. Last chance, the lead drone announced. Surrender or be terminated. James and Zena shared a look, their thoughts perfectly aligned. Above them, the cavern's ceiling was latticed with crystal formations. Below, the river rushed toward an underground waterfall. Through their completed bond, they could feel the patterns of probability, see the perfect moment approaching. Ready? Zena's thought carried a hint of mischief despite the danger. James grinned, feeling more alive than he ever had. Together. They raised their free hands in unison, gathering power for a desperate gambit that would either save them or doom them both. But with their hearts beating as one, their quantum signatures harmonized into something entirely new, neither human or luminarian but something gloriously in between. They couldn't bring themselves to feel afraid. The drones opened fire, and the cavern erupted into chaos. The cavern exploded with light as James and Zena released their combined power upward. Crystal formations shattered in a cascade of energy, raining down between them and their pursuers. But they weren't aiming for the drones. Through their bond, they'd seen the true path to survival. The waterfall. James's thought merged with action as they ran for the bridge. Behind them, the drones were already reorganizing, their networked minds adapting to the new terrain. The ancient bridge groaned beneath their feet as they sprinted across. Through his enhanced senses, James could feel the quantum patterns flowing through the metal, see the stress points beginning to fail. Zena's knowledge flowed through him, showing him exactly where to direct their power. Multiple hostiles converging, Zena broadcast through their bond. Reinforcements arriving from above. Her hand tightened in his. The knowledge crystal. James caught her meaning instantly. The small crystal she'd carried from Luminara contained everything, her people's history, their art, their understanding of the quantum field. Everything the Ascendancy wanted to erase. They reached the center of the bridge just as energy blasts began cutting through the air around them. Through their bond, they moved in perfect synchronization, dodging and weaving. But they couldn't dodge forever. Your plan is illogical, the lead drone's voice boomed across the cavern. Surrender the crystal. Embrace optimization. Resistance will only bring pain. Zena pulled the crystal from her garments, it pulsed with inner light, responding to their combined energy. They'll never stop hunting us as long as this exists, she thought to James. But if we destroy it, then your people lose everything. James felt her grief echo through their bond. There has to be another way. A blast clipped the bridge's support structure, making the whole span shudder. Through their quantum awareness, they felt the probability matrices shifting, timelines branching. And in that moment, they both saw it, a desperate chance, but one that could change everything. The river's quantum field, Zena's thought blazed with sudden hope. It's strong enough to carry information, James finished, their minds working as one. Like your people's ancient songs. They didn't need words to form the plan. As the drones advanced from both ends of the bridge, James and Zena pressed their free hands to the crystal. Their combined power flowed into it, not destroying the knowledge but transforming it, encoding it into the very quantum fabric of the river below. The crystal shattered in a burst of pure light, its contents dispersing into the rushing water. But they weren't finished. Drawing on their deepened connection to the quantum field, they began to sing, not with their voices, but with energy itself. The song carried the key to decoding the knowledge, a melody of light and consciousness that would echo through the river's quantum signature for centuries. Impossible, the lead drone's voice actually flickered with emotion, the first crack in its mechanical perfection. What have you done? Zena's reply rang with pride. We've given the knowledge back to nature itself. Every living thing that drinks from this river will carry a piece of our story. You can't erase it now, it's part of Earth itself. The bridge shuddered again as more blasts struck it. James felt the structure's quantum pattern destabilizing. Ready for the hard part? Zena's response carried equal parts fear and exhilaration. Together? Always. They turned to face the advancing drones, their combined bioluminescence filling the cavern with auroral light. Power gathered between their joined hands, building to impossible levels. The drones raised their weapons, but hesitated, their sensors overwhelmed by the energy readings. Now. Their shared thought translated to action instantly. They released the gathered power into the bridge's support structures, while simultaneously directing a portion of their energy straight down. The quantum field responded, creating a cushion of probability between them and the river far below. The bridge collapsed in spectacular fashion, taking several drones with it. James and Zena leapt into open air, their shared power carrying them in a controlled fall toward the churning water. Energy blasts followed them down, but their quantum-enhanced reflexes let them twist away from the worst of it. They hit the river together, their bond allowing them to move as one through the powerful current. The quantum signature they'd encoded into the water welcomed them, helping to carry them swiftly away from their pursuers. By the time they surfaced in a calm pool several chambers away, the sounds of pursuit had faded. They pulled themselves onto a rocky shore, both dripping and breathing hard but alive. James felt Zena's joy bubbling through their bond, and couldn't help but laugh. Did we just turn an entire river into a library? Better. Zena's skin rippled with triumphant colors. We turned it into a living story. One that will spread through Earth's waterways, becoming part of this world's own quantum signature. My people's knowledge is safe now, and it will evolve, grow, find new forms as it merges with Earth's patterns. James helped her to her feet, marveling at how natural it felt to sense her thoughts, to exist as part of something larger than himself. What will the Ascendancy do now? They'll never stop searching entirely, she admitted. But they can't destroy an entire planet's quantum field. And now? Her eyes met his, galaxies spinning in their depths. Now we have time. Time to find others who resist them. Time to show both our peoples that there's another way, one that embraces both progress and preservation. Time for us, James added, pulling her close. Where their skin touched, patterns of light danced between them. Yes, she whispered against his lips. All the time in the universe. Above them, water dripped from crystal formations in complex rhythms. Below, the river continued its ancient journey, now carrying within it songs of a distant world. And in the space between heartbeats, between quantum possibilities, a human and a luminarian held each other, living proof that love could bridge the gap between stars, between species, between different ways of seeing the universe. They were no longer merely human or luminarian, but something new. Something that carried within it the seeds of hope for both their peoples. And as they made their way back toward the surface, toward whatever challenges awaited them, they moved as one, their shared light illuminating the darkness, showing the way forward. Not just for themselves, but for all those who dared to dream of a future where progress and preservation danced together in perfect harmony, like starlight on water, like quantum patterns in an endless dance of possibility.